The tides are shifting in the lands of Farloom. Its people are losing their will and their minds by haunting threads. The once great citadel is long past its prime. A terrible power is waking from an ages-long slumber, and our hero is getting swept up in all of it. Kidnapped from her homeland of Hallownest and whisked away to these new lands, it's all up to Hornet to save the people of this kingdom from its fate. There's just one problem. Hornet forgot her weapon at home. Yeah, she was playing on her pogo stick when she got kidnapped. Yeah, that's definitely what happened. And now it's the only weapon she has with her. Yo, trust, that's not her needle, it's a pogo. Welcome to the Hollow Knight Silksong Pogo Only Challenge. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, so let's get straight into it. So first, the rules. 1. I am only allowed to directly attack enemies with the down air attack of whatever crest I'm using. 2. The punishment for breaking this rule is a forced save and quit, resetting any progress in the area or boss fight. 3. Reaper and Wanderer crests are banned. Their pogo attacks are a lot easier to use than the others with no downsides to them, which would make the challenge a lot less interesting. 4. Attacking environmental objects, using the harpoon to damage enemies during platforming sections, and using normal attacks when walking through an already explored area are all fine. 5. And finally, red tools that directly damage enemies are banned. Self-buffing tools, such as the Flea Brew for example, can be used. The Delver's Drill can also be used, because it's also a pogo attack. Duh. With everything said and done, let's get started. There's nothing too notable about the beginning of the game. The enemies here on Moss Mother can all be hit pretty easily with the pogos from the Hunter Crest. Really, most areas aren't made much harder in this challenge because, yes, fighting everything with only pogos would be very annoying, but I can almost always just walk past all the enemies. Surely I would never die to the first boss of the game, right? Well, sure, I won't die, but that doesn't mean I won't lose, as I realized something very important during the fight against Moss Mother. I think, oh. I'm not tripping, right? I definitely just smacked that enemy. All right, well, there we go. That's the first thing. You would be surprised by how easy it can be to accidentally miss input and smack an enemy with a normal attack in the heat of the moment. And fights in this challenge take a lot longer since there are fewer safe opportunities to hit most bosses with pogos compared to being able to hit them with normal attacks. The added length to these fights just means more opportunities to accidentally hit a boss normally and lose progress on the fight. Thankfully, Moss Mother's not too threatening of a fight. I can take my time, heal when I need, and win. Reset just then. I think it was actually a rock that fell on that guy that killed him, not me slashing him. There isn't really anything special going through the early areas. All the enemies that are required to fight aren't too hard to beat even with just pogoing, and I can just ignore most of the other enemies. It's not too long before I meet up with my goat, Chakra. And it's smooth sailing to the Silk Spear. Mostly smooth sailing. The next boss is the Belle Beast, which also goes smoothly. She has a lot of ending lag on this jump attack, and as long as I don't dive in the wrong direction, I can get multiple hits on her when she does this dash attack. Worth going for it. Dang it, I got very unlucky with my position there. Nice! Okay, first try though. Huge shit, boys, huge shit. With the Belle Beast defeated, my next objective is to get the Swift Step upgrade, which is in the Deep Docks. This area has the first example of the true nightmare of this challenge, pogo immune enemies. They aren't too common, but Silksong does have a list of enemies with some sort of protection that makes them immune to down air attacks. Thankfully, they're almost never required to defeat for actually progressing the game, so we can just ignore them for now. After a relatively easy enemy gauntlet, the single best feeling move and upgrade in the game is acquired, Swift Step. Seriously, man, the dash in this game just feels so great to use. Getting this thing as early as possible is like required every time I play this game. I wanted to get the Flint slate as early as possible. It's one of the only red tools that I'd be able to use under the rules of this challenge. Unfortunately, it's locked behind an enemy gauntlet containing enemies immune to pogos. With no way to damage them, both the Forge Daughter NPC and the Flint Slate tool aren't accessible. For now. Two things become clear in the first lace fight. 1. No! Oh, that was just my muscle memory. Holy hell, man. I really gotta lock in with these misinputs. I lose a lot of time and a lot of attempts accidentally hitting enemies without the pogo. And 2, the air dash we just gained makes it a lot easier to be aggressive, stick to enemies, and chain multiple pogos together. In the air at some point against any of the enemies, even one time in this challenge. I mean, especially once I get like some of the other movement. All in all, not a bad fight at all. Next is the far fields, which hold a very useful movement tool for this challenge, the Drifter's Cloak. The air stalling it allows will be very useful for getting off hits against fast moving enemies. All we need to get it is a little bit of awkward spine farming, but thankfully these Hoker enemies are possible to hit easily with a Pogo. We're immediately put to the test after getting the Drifter's Cloak with the 4th chorus fight, by far the hardest fight in this challenge so far. Normally, the 4th chorus is a relatively simple boss with only a few attacks, but the only hittable part of the boss is its head, which is a little out of reach. Each time it attacks, however, its head lowers for just a moment. So, with the right timing, it's actually pretty easy to deal a lot of damage in this fight. I think that that high score for the number of pogos I'll get without ever touching the ground might be this fight is where it's achieved, honestly. Still, this boss has a lot of health, which means a lot of time to mess up. No! Oh my god, that was probably so close. Plus, being above the boss isn't exactly safe. Being just at the top of the screen means I can't see where these rocks are falling from, and it's pretty much impossible to avoid the damage while I'm up there. I eventually learned the right times to go for damage and when to dodge, and reach the second phase of the fight. Oh my god, that must be it. With the last little bit of good dodging, I can ride these updrafts, smack these 2 rocks, and end the fight early with what is basically the ultimate down air attack. With the 4th chorus defeated, the path to the second half of Act 1 is now open. I use the Drifter's Cloak to progress to Greymoor, and from there head toward Belheart. I do stop on the way to grab the Reaper's Crest, but as I mentioned earlier, I won't actually be using it for the challenge. The only real obstacle to entering Belheart is Moorwing. By now I'm pretty used to this fight, and it actually isn't made much harder in this challenge. Moorwing has a lot of attacks that open her up to being hit by a Pogo, and it's usually pretty safe being above the boss. Plus, the nerf to this boss made it even easier, so this boss went down smoothly. The final mark on our list of Act 1 movement abilities is the Cling Grip, which now that we've entered Belheart is right around the corner. Shellwood has a particularly tricky enemy gauntlet that is required, and it did give me a good deal of trouble. This enemy specifically is too high up to hit normally and needs to be lured down with the taunt move. Alright, one more. Third tries the charm, and I'm just barely able to make it out alive here. The boss guarding the wall climb upgrade is Sister Splinter, another of the early game bosses that has been made easier with a nerf since the game's release. Unfortunately, that nerf is not going to be enough to save me this time, as this boss is a nightmare for this challenge. Like the 4th chorus, Sister Splinter hangs out at the top of the screen, making her hard to reach. She also moves side to side very erratically, so it's possible to get hit without any hope of being able to get out of the way. And believe it or not, neither of those are actually the worst part of this fight. The walls and ceiling are all covered in thorns, so more often than not, I just pogo myself right into the ceiling and take more damage. So yeah, this fight is almost impossible for this challenge, especially with the health and gear that I have now. Aww. Thankfully, I won't have to spend hundreds of attempts on a perfect fight because Sister Splinter is actually an optional fight. You've probably seen this skip by now, but if you didn't know, if you lure this enemy here using the taunt, you can position it in a way to pogo off of it and reach this section of the room early. This room that you pass through to get to Sister Splinter is actually just the bottom section of the room that contains the Cling Grip. So doing this skip allows you to do this section early and get the wall jump without having to fight Sister Splinter. With all the movement upgrades acquired, the last key to clearing Act 1 is the Ocarina of the Needling, which is obtained after defeating Widow and freeing Belheart. Widow really does a great job of showcasing how the movement abilities in the game not only make dodging easier for this challenge, but also the offense. Using the cloak to stay in the air and aim a precise attack, or using the dodge to keep up with Widow as she moves and string along attacks together are all vital skills to practice in this fight. Even so, having to balance getting in attacks when I can and dodging all of the attacks the boss throws out isn't easy. No! Oh my god. Wow. Nice. No. So much damage. Oh, I should heal there. No. Wait, that's the opportunity to heal right there. That sucks. All right, lock the fuck in, boys. That's not locked in. No. Oh my gosh. All right, heal here. Good heal. Nice again, brother. Oh my goodness, I'm smoking her this time. Oh my god! Are you seeing this gameplay, chat? Are you seeing this gameplay? Oh, Widow, you did not stand a chance, sister. You are dead, bro. That was a good fight. That was a fun way to make that fight, which at this point is like very easy, like a little more difficult and a little more enjoyable and challenging. That was a cool twist. Widow definitely takes the crown from 4th Chorus for the toughest boss in this challenge so far. But I've got to say how playing the game with this restriction has made the game feel so fresh. A lot of bosses that feel a little too easy to fight normally have gotten a lot tougher. Much more challenging, but still feeling like a fair fight. We'll see how long it takes for this fair extra challenge to turn into pure frustration. With Belheart freed, I can collect my free needle upgrade for some extra damage before I move on. And before I move on with the rest of this video, let me remind you to pogo that like button if you're enjoying the video, and if you want to see the rest of the Silksong Pogo only challenge, to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for hearing me out. Now, back to the challenge. With the movement to explore most of Act 1, it's time for some backtracking to grab a few things I've missed. There are also plenty of wishes to do in Bone Bottom and Belheart. I do grab the Wanderer's Crest from the grave behind Bone Bottom, but the crest itself won't be used in this challenge. Now, you might be asking, why do I even bother grabbing these crests if I can't even use them? Well, don't worry, there is a reason behind it. If you return to Mossholm with the needle in, you can open up this weaver door, unlocking the Weave Nest Atla. There's an NPC here named Eva who can provide Hornet with several upgrades throughout the game, including upgrades to the Hunter's Crest. Before Eva will give you these upgrades, however, you need to unlock a certain number of tool notches throughout the rest of your crests. Using memory lockets and unlocking new crests adds to this total, so it's still worth to grab all the other crests, even if I don't use them. The first upgrade Eva provides is adding a focus mechanic to Hornet's Needle, which will improve my DPS as long as I don't get hit. Speaking of getting new crests, I want to grab the Beast Crest while I explore Hunter's March, but it's blocked by an absolute beast of a boss, the Savage Beastfly. This boss ended up being pretty challenging, with it being pretty tough to get in attacks as the boss flies directly into me. It's really annoying once you start spawning in ads, but thankfully, with some good positioning, you can bait the boss into killing his own minions with his attacks. Yes, boys! Oh my goodness, let's fucking go, dude. 25 minutes of attempts later, and the Beast Crest is acquired. Now, this crest is a bitch to use, meaning it definitely is allowed to use in this challenge, but I don't hate myself enough to try and use it. Normally, it's a crest that is actually great for fighting bosses, but not so much for exploration. But it has by far the hardest pogo to use, having a very awkward hitbox on the attack. To me, it's definitely the worst pogo in the game, and as long as I have other options, I'm not touching that shit with a 10-foot pole. One of the most useful, really one of the only useful, red tools in this challenge is within the Wormways. The Plasmium File is the defensive red tool that gives a Lifeblood Heart on use, which is just some nice extra survivability. And at this point, it's really the only red tool I can even use, other than the Flea Brew, which is just kind of useless for this challenge. And that pretty much wraps up everything for Act 1, which leaves us 2 options on what to do next. Well, I actually end up doing both. First, I could just explore the Blasted Steps, defeat the last judge, and enter the Citadel through the main entrance. The alternate method to reach Act 2 is through the Exhaust Organ. using the Needlein to navigate the mist, and defeating Phantom, the hidden boss who guards the exhaust organ. I actually decide for option 2, eager to try out fighting Phantom with only Pogos. It is, of course, only after I spend an hour getting to her that I realize you can't defeat Phantom with only Pogoing. The fight has a scripted ending. When you beat the boss, you are forced into a quick time event and must use the parry silk skill to finish off the boss. Now, is this really against the rules of the challenge? This is basically just a cutscene of defeating the boss, but at the same time, it does use an actual combat ability from the game, it being how you unlock said ability. The ultimate deciding factor for me was that Phantom is literally an optional boss. If something like this meant stopping the challenge, I would just chalk it up to a gray area and give it a pass. But since this is just an alternate method to enter Act 2, it wouldn't sit right for me to just go through with it. With that being said, it's back to option 1, the blasted steps. This area isn't really anything special for this challenge. Like usual, most enemies can just be ignored, so it's not too long before I reach the Grand Gate. Fighting the last judge with Pogoing is actually not that much different from the normal fight. The boss doesn't really punish you that much for being in the air. In fact, it's more advantageous to be in the air for a lot of the fight. No! Yep, that's definitely the way I would fail first trying this fight. There we go. There we go. You know what? I think I should stand right next to the boss right now. This seems like a really good time to stand right next to the boss. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Okay, that's how it's done. Should we talk about Act 2, boys? Let's fucking go. Riding the high of easily giving the last judge her final judgment, we sprint straight through to the Grand Gate. I haven't directly mentioned it until now, but if you have been paying attention, you'll realize that I've been collecting mask and silk upgrades throughout the playthrough. Especially in a challenge like this, as much health as possible can make the difference between success and failure. Since I entered Act 2 through the last judge, I'll have to enter the Citadel through the Underworks. And don't let the name confuse you, the Underworks are nothing like Undertale. This place is not fun at all. Every aspect that has this challenge at its most annoying can be found right here. We got buzzsaws that would make the Pale King blush. Tight corridors that make pogoing enemies much harder. Annoying, hard to hit flying enemies. And of course, even more buzzsaws. After some deaths, I'm gonna die here. I'm gonna die here and my family will miss me. An enemy gauntlet or two. I need you to die. Thank you. And some more deaths. Until like, oh my god, if I actually die to that. Yo, what? What are you doing? Oh my god. I can finally leave the Underworks and enter the Citadel proper, when I'm greeted with a not-so-warm welcome from Lace and her grandmother. The Citadel is a seriously huge area, within itself containing multiple sub-areas that are all pretty big themselves, so it can feel pretty overwhelming. Luckily, I've been playing a lot more Silksong than is probably healthy for a normal person, so I already know an efficient path forward. Should I really call that lucky? At least at the beginning here, I'm gonna be more or less following the any % speedrun route for this section of the game. I've watched a lot of the Silksong speedrunning content from other YouTubers, and I've even gotten some hands-on practice with the 5-hour speedrun achievement in the game as well. In the speedrun, the first thing you do in Act 2 is head straight to the Cogwork Dancers. So, that's the first stop. This pair of Robo-Homos are actually really one of my favorite bosses in the game. The fight itself gives me strong Mantis Lords vibes as they attack in tandem with each other, and especially in the third phase as they attack one after another the same way the Mantis Lords do. I don't quite get the fight on my first try, which kind of surprised me because I usually really find the fight quite easy, but it's not too long before the pair is taken down. actually so sad. Oh my god, dude. That's so sad. It's here that we're assigned the main objective of Act 2. Explore each area, visit the ancient keepers who pass down 3 parts to a sacred melody, and learn said melody to progress through to the climax of the game. Why did The Legend of Zelda copy Silksong? Anyway, continuing on with the speedrun route, we take a path through the Cogwork Core to enter the Whispering Vaults. This area does contain the first piece of the threefold melody that we need to collect, but that isn't the main objective for now. Trobio is another fan-favorite boss, and all things considered, he's a pretty fun fight in a normal playthrough. This isn't a normal playthrough though, so the question is, how is he for Pogo only? The answer is he's pretty damn tough. He's another very agile boss, never sitting still for too long, so it's hard to find the right time to get attacks in. His attacks also take up a huge portion of the screen all at once, so it's a lot harder to find opportunities to get in punishes. His tornado attack, which is actually countered pretty well by Pogos, can also be dangerous because it's so easy just to make a small mistake, a small misinput, and dive right into his attack. At least I've got this verified banger to listen to during these attempts against the boss. Nice! There we go. Okay, this boss, you gave me a lot more fucking trouble than you were worth, Trobio. GG's though, GG's. GG's. With Trobio defeated, we can follow the path that he was guarding, which leads back into the underworks. Oh, brother. Thankfully, we won't be here that long, as that main objective I mentioned earlier is pretty much the only thing we need from here right now. A very cool movement tool that we all know and love, the claw shot. The claw line. Okay, no more Zelda jokes, I swear. The claw line is a very cool tool, and it's actually really great for normal combat, but of course that won't matter for this challenge. We just need it for all of the areas it opens up access to in the game. By now, we're not really in the early game of Act 2 anymore, so it's finally time to deviate from the speedrunning route. I collect the Sacred Cylinder and do a more thorough exploration of the Whispering Vaults, ending off with learning the first part of the song, the Vault Keeper's Melody. For the past 8 hours or so of gameplay in this challenge, I spent effectively the whole time just using the Hunter's Crest. Now it's finally time to change that with the Architect's Crest. This crest has a normal heal, thank God, and a pretty unique pogo. It's the only pogo that has a charged variant with greater range and damage. This adds a lot of complexity to using it. I can always go for the standard hit when I need to, but if an enemy is slightly out of range, I can use the charged variant to close the gap. The slower nature of the attack allows me to stall in the air a little bit, which can also be used to time out my attacks. Of course, this slower speed has its own drawbacks as well. And while both crests do have a diagonal pogo, the angle on the Architect is quite a bit more shallow, throwing off my aim just enough to miss attacks. At the end of the day, I'd say that the Crest of the Hunter is probably easier to use, but I'm committed to sticking with the Crest of the Architect for at least a little while. Both the novelty of having a charged pogo for some extra options in combat, plus the fact that I just want to switch it up from what I've been using this whole time, are the two main reasons for this decision. Now, the claw line does open up a lot of the game, but it doesn't open up everything. For that, I'll need the Fey Down Cloak, which, now that I do have the claw line, I actually can get to. Mount Fey brings up an interesting question for this challenge. In fact, one of the rules for this challenge only exists because of this area. Rule 4 states that using the harpoon on enemies during platforming sections is allowed. So obviously, I'm gonna be using it so I can progress. It is still hitting enemies without the pogo, but as far as I'm aware, it's impossible to complete Mount Fey without hitting enemies at all, so in the interest of the playthrough, I'm gonna allow it. It's not too long before both the double jump and a fuzzy new friend for Hornet are acquired. With all this movement, we really could go anywhere. I do need to make a quick stop back to the Underworks to pick up something I missed. The Delver's Drill is the only red tool weapon that is itself a pogo, so it passes the entrance exam for this challenge. Now this might seem an odd choice for where to go next, but the Wisp Thicket has a tool that completely changes the game for this challenge. It's acquired by defeating the boss of the area, the Father of the Flame, which even in a normal playthrough can only be beaten with pogos. So surely, for this challenge, it shouldn't be a problem. At the very least, it doesn't. That would be... There we go, bro. Get out of here. Not a problem. Just like I said. Jesus. And what I get for this fight? A charm that actually might be the key to everything in this challenge. All right, let me explain what I mean when I say that. The Wisp-Fire Lantern is basically Silksong's equivalent to the Glowing Womb charm from Hollow Knight. It's a blue tool that will passively spend silk to summon in a friendly wisp that will fly into enemies and damage them, and that includes pogo immune enemies. The real thing that makes this loophole work so well is the passive silk regeneration that Hornet has. I don't need to hit enemies to generate the silk that's used by the tool, so as long as I can just dodge throughout the whole fight, I can now take on any enemy gauntlet or boss that has pogo immune enemies. So obviously, this is a loophole to the rules of the challenge. I definitely am not attacking these enemies with normal hits, so it's not really breaking the rules. But yeah, clearly I am damaging them with other means than a pogo attack. If all enemies that were pogo immune were optional, I'd probably just say that those enemies aren't killable and just have to skip over them. If pogo immune enemies were all found in optional encounters, I'd probably just say that those are off the table and I just have to skip them. However, there are places, such as this gauntlet or the Forge Brothers boss, that are required for beating all 3 acts. And I'd rather use this loophole to progress than just call the challenge a failure. But hey, if you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. In the end, I decide to only use this method when I'm fighting pogo immune enemies and never just to help out in combat in general, and I think that's a pretty good middle ground. But thanks to the help of the strategy, the Forge Daughter and the rest of the Deep Docks are now unlocked, and you know what that means. It's Flint Slate time, baby! I was expecting to get this tool like 8 hours ago, so it's been long overdue. I really was not anticipating all the roadblocks that would be in the way before being able to access it. My plan was to head to the far fields next, as there are plenty of things there for me to grab with the new upgrades I've gotten since Act 1. But a certain beastfly had some other ideas. The Savage Beastfly was already one of the tougher bosses during its first encounter. Definitely not the hardest in the challenge, but among the harder ones. The second fight with him though, literally exponentially harder. I did not do myself any favors by stubbornly refusing to switch off of the Architect's Crest. There's no walls, the floors are breakable, and he summons in flying ranged adds. All of this just makes the fight so much harder, even if it feels like it really shouldn't be. Here's a solid 50 minutes worth of deaths, condensed into just 2 seconds. You're welcome. Yes! Fuck you! Fuck you, Savage Beastfly. Finally killing this thing gave me such a high, bro. I can't even exaggerate how good it felt to finally be done with this fucker. Goodbye and good riddance. Okay, guys, I think we can agree that it's time for something a little more relaxing. Let's do something nice and fun that doesn't involve boss fights. Okay, in all seriousness, compared to what I just did and what I'm about to do, the Cogwork Core actually is relaxing. Just in general, I found all of the platforming focused sections in Silksong way easier than most of the stuff in Hollow Knight. Mount Faye, the Cogwork Core, even the platforming section that leads to the hidden village on the surface. None of it was really challenging or frustrating to complete. The Path of Pain is leagues above anything in Silksong, but you don't even have to go that far. I'd just say the normal White Palace sequence in Hollow Knight is harder than anything in Silksong. I wonder if that would be considered an unpopular opinion. Well, let me know if you guys agree or disagree in the comments below. And to be clear, I am not complaining or anything. I actually really like the depth of movement the claw line adds in Silksong, and I enjoyed the platforming in this game a lot. I also really look forward to seeing if Team Cherry adds a Path of Pain equivalent in a potential Silksong DLC. With the Cogwar core and the Zelda puzzle at the top of the core completed, we now have 2 of the 3 pieces of the threefold melody collected. Feeling inspired after completing a Zelda puzzle in Silksong, I decided to pay a visit to the Royal Mergwyn and start the Zelda side quest in Silksong. Okay, yeah, I lied when I said no more Zelda references, but so what? Can you blame me? All of Act 2 is basically The Legend of Zelda in Silksong, and I love it, okay? Jeez. Well, considering what I'm about to do, it probably would have been smart to not just accept the quest, but to actually do it and get the nail upgrade. Oh well. Yep, it's that time, the High Halls Gauntlet. Okay, it's actually almost that time. Let me show you something cool first, trust. Did you know you can actually permanently remove those annoying silk stealing enemies in Act 2? Yes, those annoying enemies, and yes, I said permanently remove. I didn't know this until some chatters pointed it out to me while I was playing this run live, but if you come into this room in the High Halls, right above and to the left of the room with the Ventrica station, you can use this cart to get to this hidden room. There are a few enemies in this room, but you don't actually need to fight them. Just bring this cart to this spot and jump again to this part of the ceiling, break this clump of silk, and bam! Just like that, the Claw Maidens will no longer spawn anywhere in Act 2. And that includes the High Halls Gauntlet, so that should help at least a little bit with making that a little easier.
We call this foreshadowing.
For real though, shout out Stream Chat for showing me this during the playthrough. Quick plug for the stream, if you didn't already know, I do live stream this challenge run, and I will be doing more challenge runs in the future. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on just about every platform, and that includes right here on YouTube. You can find all the links to all of my other channels down in the description. But yeah, this trick with getting rid of the Claw Maidens is just another example of just how many insanely cool secrets Silksong has. And if this video is the reason you learn about this secret, then you have to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's only fair. Okay, I don't think I can stall anymore. It's finally time for the High Halls Gauntlet. Here we go. 11 waves back to back containing some of the toughest enemies thus far in the game, with them coming out in combinations that will make you want to rip your hair out, capping it off with a final wave containing 2 very tanky double damage mini bosses. This is easily the toughest challenge in the run so far. Yes, including the Savage Beastfly refight. We live in a simulation. I'm just dead. Nope. That fell! I know you guys saw him switching directions just then. No! 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 Let's go wave by wave and break it down. The first wave really isn't that bad. Any flying enemy is annoying for this challenge, including this guy, but in this wave it's only one of them. The small dude can get a hit off every once in a while, but is usually pretty easy to deal with. And same with the chorister, although watch out for his double damage AoE attack. Wave 2 also isn't bad. There are less enemies than Wave 1, but still, remember these guys can deal double damage, so it's important to not mess up here and take too much damage. Wave 3 is where it starts to get tricky. 2 flying enemies with ranged attacks and flight patterns that make it very hard to land hits on them. The bell throwing enemy especially really loves to dash away right before I can land a hit, which makes him very annoying. It's still early in the gauntlet though, and there's only 2 enemies total in this wave. Wave 4 is another round of 2 flying enemies, but these guys are nowhere near as bad as the other types of flying enemies in the gauntlet. They can also deal double damage with one of their attacks, but their flight pattern and bigger hitbox makes them much easier to deal with, so they aren't anywhere near as bad. Ooh, Wave 5. It's the worst one, I think, so it's nice that at least it's one of the earlier ones. The Maestro enemy is the most annoying of all in this challenge, and Wave 5 has 2 of them. It's basically impossible to fight these guys without taking damage in the Pogo only challenge. This is because the cog flies that orbit them, which will fly into Hornet since I need to be above the Maestro in order to hit it. You also can't just go slow and try taking out the cog flies first either, since the Maestro can just resummon them in. The best strategy I found was to position myself ahead of time to be directly above where one of them will spawn, and immediately take it out with the Delver's Drill. It does enough damage that 2 uses of it, or 1 use and a few needle hits, will take one out. This is more of a kamikaze strategy though, so I used a lifeblood file and just tank the damage. When 1 remains, it's still kind of impossible to take it down without getting hit, but it's at least not as bad as dealing with 2, so I can just take my time and try to kill it carefully. Or just use the drill again. Wave 6 is really not that bad. I still need to be careful since these dudes always deal double damage, but they are slow and easy enough to dodge. And since there's only one of them, as long as I'm locked in, I can usually just use him to farm silk and refresh my tools. Wave 7 is another stinker. 3 flying enemies in a formation that can be seriously hard to break through. I swear to God, sometimes it feels like these dudes aren't following an enemy AI, but are actually controlled by a professional esports team with the amount of coordination and teamwork they have. Having a full silk bar from the previous wave is very nice to get through this wave with as much health as possible. Yet another stinker for wave 8, 2 of the flying bell thrower dudes. They can be managed relatively easily if you keep them close together so their projectiles are easier to predict and dodge, and grouping them up against the corner so they can't fly away is ideal. Wave 9 is similar to wave 4, but with a bell thrower added to the mix. Just one isn't too annoying thankfully, and once he's out of the way, it's just a standard wave. Wave 10. Wow. This wave, while probably not as hard as wave 5 since it only has one of the maestro enemies, feels a lot harder since it's so late into the challenge. The pressure is really built up by this point, as dying here sends me all the way back to wave 1. Wave 11, the final wave and arguably the most dangerous. 2 of these mini-boss enemies at once makes it more than twice as hard as wave 6. I really don't have anything to say here. They're tough enemies. Yes. Okay. Just stay locked in. Just stay locked in. Just stay locked in. Yes! Oh, first try, baby, on the comeback, bro. First try. I really thought I wasn't gonna make it out of that one. With how I took so much damage so fast, it felt like I did a full half of that fight at 1 health. Now, let me tell you something. What made this feel so good is that this was actually my first attempt of the session. I ran out of time on the last stream and had to end the stream before I could beat the gauntlet. This successful attempt was a few days later on the next stream. It was the very first thing that I did in that stream, and I got it on my first try. Now that I've waited long enough to farm any commenters that would have asked this question instead of addressing it at the beginning, yes, I almost certainly made this gauntlet way harder than it needed to be by using the Architect's Crest the whole time. The Hunter probably would have been a lot easier to use, and it wouldn't have taken the almost 2 hours of attempts I spent on the fight. But I'm stubborn, okay? I wanted to use the Architect's Crest for the gauntlet, so I did. But from this point, I am pretty satisfied, and I do end up switching between the two and going back to the Hunter's Crest whenever I feel like it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. With the High Halls Gauntlet completed, I can finally collect the final part of the song for the threefold melody and access the cradle, which we'll have to wait until next time. Lace 2 is a very fast-paced fight, with Lace jumping and dashing around the arena every second. This can make it hard to land hits on her in time, but that's already a problem with fighting her normally, so it doesn't feel like an extra difficult aspect of this challenge. The way I respond to most of her attacks isn't too different than from normal play, with the exception of this attack. If I'm diving into her for a pogo and she jumps straight at me, the outcome isn't exactly a favorable trade. So how do I get around this attack? Simple. Lock in.
Bop.
Yes! Dude, oh my goodness. I just fucking like tapped the fuck in, bro. Man, that fight felt great. I really just clicked with the flow of the fight for Pogo only and was able to beat her on my second try. The reward for beating Lace is the third, or for this playthrough second, as we won't be fighting the Unraveled, Silk Heart. And this is actually a pretty nice upgrade since it makes the Wistfire Lantern strategy I use for certain enemies a little more reliable. Well, at this point, the final boss of Act 2 and the end of the challenge is accessible, but I won't be fighting Grandmother Silk just yet. Yep, that's right, if you didn't know already, we're doing Act 3 on this run too, so I've got a lot of work to do. First up on the to-do list is to visit the White Word. There are a few things to do here, such as getting some upgrades, getting the injector van tool, and helping out best boy Shaman. He's also my goat. After that, I make a small return trip to the Cogwork Core and return life to the second Sentinel using the pieces of the Cogwork Heart that I've been collecting throughout the Citadel. There's a fun fight against this NPC with a potentially useful reward, so I decided to take the time to wake her up just in case. Okay, so what next? Well, I haven't made any Zelda references in a while. Let's fix that. In a brilliant decision, Team Cherry fused together 3 amazing quest mechanics. So what happens when you combine the concept of a delivery quest, the time limit from the Ocarina of Time Begoron Sword quest, and the no-hit condition from Team Cherry's own Delicate Flower quest? You get the Courier's Rasher quest. Honestly, I think Team Cherry deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for what they've done here. Seriously, what a masterclass. Man, fuck you, Courier's Rasher quest.
Hey, man, I'm mysterious.
God, shut up! Seriously!
So that quest was one part of a greater quest line called the Flavors of Farloom, and the reward at the end of it is another needle upgrade. So while it is very tedious to do, it's worth it. In addition to delivering the rasher, I'll need to collect some mossberry stew, fight some ants to get a casket of Farloom's finest vintage nectar, take a scenic route through Farloom's premier desert resort and find the crustiest of nuts, and finally experience some fine dining at 5-star restaurant Le Lugoli. With all of the different ingredients acquired, I can bring them back to the Royal Mergwyn and he turns them into this? Okay. He turns them into this to feed his master who, doesn't really look like they need the meal. Anything for the needle upgrade, I guess. I think the best way to test our new weapon is against a fellow sentinel. So let's see how it goes. That was fun. I got it on the second try, or third if you count my first try ending by me hitting the boss with a normal hit rather than a pogo. Yeah, I'm still doing this a dozen hours into the playthrough. What of it? I don't know if I'll end up using the reserve bind tool, but it's still a nice one to have. Now is finally the time to enter Bile Water, but we won't be doing the main exploration of the area just yet. For now, I'm dropping into the area from the Citadel for a quick stop to grab the Twisted Bud. By now, you probably know what this is used for, and yeah, you guessed it, it's abortion time. It being the only one with such a process involved in getting it, there is a rather lengthy quest line for acquiring the Crest of the Witch. It starts with the Twisted Bud being forcefully implanted into Hornet, cursing her. While cursed, Hornet can't build up enough silk to heal, can't equip any tools or silk skills, and is locked into the moveset of the Witch's Crest. The first step in the quest is to escape from the Chapel of the Witch and make it back to Belheart. From here, we learn of an exiled member of the village living in Greymoor that might have the knowledge to remove the parasite from Hornet, so we head to her next. Yarnaby here seems a little too interested in helping with extracting the parasite, but what other choice do we have? She sends us to Sinner's Road to buy some steel spines off of these dudes, which she uses to do this. So, the Witch's Crest. It's a pretty cool one with an interesting pogo. It's much closer to the Wanderer's Crest in its animation, so you might be wondering, why is it allowed in the challenge? Well, the reason for that is its bind. Unlike the other crests, it doesn't heal Hornet when used normally. The bind in itself is an attack, which will heal Hornet if it damages an enemy. There's just one small problem though. That is not a pogo. So yeah, while the Witch's Crest might be the easiest to use in terms of its attack animation, I can basically never heal with it. This makes it pretty fun to use while casually running around or exploring areas, but if I ever need to fight a tough boss, I'm much better switching to the Architect or the Hunter Crest. I do keep it on for now, because why not? Now, I'm just about ready to explore Bilewater, but I have to make a few stops at the Putrefied Ducts first. There isn't that much to do here, since the fleas aren't here yet, and I don't have a way of doing the Huntress's Wish for Longclaw, but there are a few important things to get here. The Key of the Apostate opens up the slab, and one of my favorite bosses in the game, so I definitely want to grab this while I'm here. The Wreath of Purity is a tool that grants resistance to the mucked up water of this area, so there's literally no reason to ever explore Bilewater without having the tool equipped. Vogue here is the Flea's bodyguard, and she can also be found in the ducts. And of course, the fleas can't move into Fleetopia if they don't know where to find it, and Hornet can't tell them where to find it if she's never been to it, so we gotta come here at least once. That's all for the Putrefied Ducts though, so now it's back to Bilewater. There are a handful of things I need to grab here, such as memory lockets, and the fleas I'll need to move the caravan to Fleetopia. There are more notable pickups here too though. I get the final map from Chakra, unlocking her wish, which is also in this area and is something that's required for Act 3. And speaking of that wish, we do find her master here and take a moment together to pay our respects. The last thing in Bilewater that's needed won't be so simple to get. It's guarded by one of the fiercest challenges in Silksong, Grohl's Gauntlet. I mean, Grohl isn't really known for being a super hard boss himself. Most of his infamy comes from the obnoxious runback for the boss, and the fact that there's a tedious enemy gauntlet right before the boss. Plus, Pogo attacks are actually pretty good against this boss during normal gameplay, so maybe this won't be that bad? Maybe? Let's see if we can make this happen. Nice! Let's go, boys! First try! One mask remaining! Oh my goodness, bro. Let me get some GGs in the chat, bro. Let me get some W's in the chat. Oh my god. It actually wasn't bad at all. First try. Yeah, you gotta leave a like on the video for that one. With Grohl dead, the most important pickup in Bilewater is now accessible, the Seeker's Soul. This item is going to be needed to enter Act 3, so it's pretty much necessary. Even better, just on a whim, I decided to check on the fleas in the Blasted Steppes and just see how many more I would need before they were ready to move on. And look at that, they're already ready to go. That's a pleasant surprise. I guess I've collected a lot more fleas this whole time than I've realized. With pretty much all of the major requirements for starting Act 3 already completed, there are 2 personal requirements that I feel like I should do before wrapping up things for Act 2. Things kick off in the slab, where I can now use the Key of the Apostate to open up the rest of the area for exploration. There are only a couple of things that I'm even here for, and the process of exploring the area is pretty boring for the most part. The coolest sequence in this area is something that I can't even do in this playthrough, since I was never abducted by the prison wardens in other areas. If you know, you know. So I'll just skip to the juicy bits. Behind this door is one of the more interesting platforming challenges in Silksong, with another mass shard as the reward. Having to keep up with the constantly moving buzzsaw and make use of it by continuously pogoing it to reach the top of the room is actually pretty fun. For some reason, I struggle with this sequence a lot more than I should. But it's the first time I've used the Witch's Pogo for platforming like this, and I just need to get the hang of it. I eventually fumbled my way up to the top and grabbed the 9th full mask, making me quite tanky, only one away from full health.
Onto it.
And the
Holy
only other
shit.
thing
Alright,
I'm
that's
here
actually
for-
sick.
I meant pretty boring when I said it.
That.
And the only other thing that I'm here for, I meant pretty boring when I said it, is the absolute coolest hidden boss in this entire game, if not just straight up the coolest boss in the whole game, the First Sinner. God, I love this boss. That fake out of thinking you're just about to get another Weaver ability? Golden. And the fight itself, it's amazing. I wish it was a little bit harder, but damn is it fun. What it lacks in difficulty, it makes up for in how fast-paced it is. Especially in the second phase, the boss moves so fast and just never stays still, making it quite intricate to sneak in a hit or two when I can. I do pretty well for a first attempt, and it's pretty obvious that for such a quick boss, I'd see better results with a faster crest, but you know the gist by now. I'm way too damn stubborn to switch from the Architect crest now that I know I can beat her with it. I would love to be able to fight this boss in a Pantheon, or maybe even a more powerful version if they make... Wow, gotta love that fight. I absolutely can't wait for Silksong DLC. I would love to be able to fight this boss in a Pantheon, or maybe even a more powerful version if they make something like that in a DLC. Now, you might be asking, isn't Rune Rage useless in this challenge? Yes it is. So, you might also be asking, did I just fight that boss just to fight it? And yes I did. Moving on. So yeah, fighting the First Sinner was one of those 2 personal requirements I mentioned earlier, and let's just say that was the fun one. While not a required fight to beat the game, the 4 brothers are required to beat Act 3. And if you're wondering why I'm fighting them now and not just saving them for Act 3, it's because of the ads they summon. Of course they summon in ads. In Act 3, they get buffed to deal double damage and have more health, so it's actually an easier fight to just do them now in Act 2. You might also notice that, yes, this boss is immune to pogo attacks, so yep, that means I'm breaking out the Wistfire Lantern again. This boss is actually the main reason I needed to come up with such a strategy, and it's by far the hardest boss that requires it. Cygnus only has 2 attacks. He can throw his Twin Blade with a pretty surprising amount of distance, and it'll boomerang back to him. It stays out for quite a while, so either jump over it or use the parachute to stay in the air and dodge it. His melee attack also has a surprising amount of distance, this time with a hitbox extending pretty high above the boss. So either stay well above him or just dash away to avoid that attack. Huh? What's that I hear you say? This doesn't seem that bad? His attacks aren't that hard to dodge if I just keep my distance? Well, you know, imaginary YouTube viewer, I actually would agree with you if it weren't for one thing. Requirement before I progress to Act 3 is so... Yep, I call them the 4 brothers for a reason. It's a duo boss fight. Gron also only has 2 attacks, with a ranged throw attack and a melee slam attack. The slam isn't too bad, but the tracking on his throw is just unpredictable enough to catch me here and there. It's made infinitely more annoying when the boss deals damage, not from me failing to dodge one of their attacks, but from them just jumping straight into me with no warning or reason at all. Amazing. Well, I don't have a choice except just dodge for as long as physically possible and hope that they lose more health than I do. The one trick I can do is try to preserve my silk cocoon for when I've taken some damage and smack it to get enough silk for a heal. I can only do this once per attempt though, so I've got to make it count. Yes! Oh, I'm finally done. Oh my god, bro. Whew, I really did not think I was gonna make it there. For some context, that attempt took a full 8 minutes of real life time, so it was just 8 minutes straight of me not even fighting, just dodging the boss. Awful. In total, it was about 40 to 50 minutes of attempts before I won, and I'm honestly just thankful that it didn't take longer. The very last requirement before I progress to Act 3 is simple. Just become a certified homeowner in the land of Farloom. And I think Belheart is going to be just the perfect location. I collect my new house key, and then I can accept the Silk and Soul Wish, the quest line necessary to enter Act 3. The quest line itself I actually have mostly done, at least the hard parts. You need to collect 4 items and bring them to the Caretaker in Songclave, and the only item that's remotely hard to obtain, the Seeker's Soul from Bile Water, I already have. The other things I need are very simple to grab. I can get the Snare Setter tool from Weaveness Atla, grab the Maiden's Soul from the Rune Chapel way back at the start of the game, and finally the Hermit's Soul from under Belheart. Return to the Caretaker with these items and he will set up a trap for Grandmother Silk. Hornet isn't really sure exactly what this trap is going to do, but it does seem like it will be needed to ensure the best for Farloom's future. Is this true? Well, there's only one way to find out. Grandmother Silk is a little underwhelming. On a gameplay level, she's basically meant to be a parallel to the Hollow Knight. Technically a final boss, but both story and difficulty-wise, purposefully unfulfilling. You're meant to know that there's more to this game beyond this as the final boss. The issue is, in the lore, this boss should wield just as much power as the Radiance, and the difficulty of the fight just does not reflect that. It is still a cool fight overall, but just like in my first playthrough, I'm able to beat her on my first try, even with Pogo only. I honestly was expecting her to be a little tougher, what with her being one of the bosses that isn't on the ground, but she wasn't high up enough to make reaching her with only Pogos a problem like the 4th chorus was.
GG's. Wow, that was so much easier than I was expecting it to be.
Overall, a very satisfying first try. The start of Act 3 is so damn peak, bro. Having to break your literal save file free from the void tendrils that cover it, getting the name drop of the Abyss as the title of Act 3, and waking up in the cradle with everything in shambles, having to crawl through the cramped ventilation systems of the Citadel to make it back. In the end, waking up in Songclave thanks to, saved by my goat? Sherma to the rescue yet again. As I was saying, the whole intro sequence to Act 3 is just perfect. One of the best ways to create an unsettling atmosphere for a player is to take what they're used to, who and what they're familiar with, and just change it up. And I think Silksong has done that here in Act 3 perfectly, creating one of the most memorable moments in gaming, not just from this year, but of all time. The perfect cherry on top is what happens when you try to call for the Bell Beast, your means of fast travel. She's been a companion for basically the entirety of the game up till now, and this happens. The Bell Eater is a mixed bag of a boss. The atmosphere and presentation of the fight is top tier, but the fight itself is a little bit meh. I don't actually dislike the fight at all, it just has a couple flaws. It's the big example of a fight in which even if you know the fight inside and out, sometimes you just have to wait, since the boss has multiple attacks that you just have to dodge since you can't get any hits during them. That problem is especially exacerbated in this challenge, as half of the attacks the boss does are from the ceiling. Normally there would be plenty of time to jump up and get a few hits on the boss while it's on the ceiling like this, but unfortunately they removed Hornet's ability to reverse gravity and Pogo upside down from the last patch. Thankfully the fight actually isn't as bad as I was expecting. I can get in hits relatively frequently, so while it's more annoying than normal to fight, it's by no means the worst I've had to deal with in this challenge. Yep, definitely more annoying than normal.
There we go. I think that's it. The way he just left. Yes. Yo, Bell Mommy, come here.
Yo, okay, I take it back. 10 out of 10 fight. This is absolute cinema. Peak ending to the fight and peak reward for the fight. Nah, but seriously though, the Beastling Call is insanely useful. In a game with such a big map, being able to teleport to the nearest fast travel station from basically anywhere is amazing. My only hang up with it is that I kinda just feel like there's no reason to only get it in Act 3 after so many hours into the game. Like, yeah, I'm happy it's here at all, but damn, it would have been nice to have this a lot earlier. With fast travel re-unlocked, the first thing I do is visit Grindel's shop in the Blasted Steppes. In Act 3, you can buy one of the only yellow tools that are useful for combat, the Magnetite Dice. I could have gotten these earlier in Act 2, but if I'm being honest, I did not know how to do that until after I played this run. Well, with the state Farloom is in, and the one responsible for this state nowhere to be seen in Songclave, Hornet returns to the ruined chapel looking for answers, and plot twist. No, seriously, what a cool reveal. Seeing snail shamans here in my first playthrough was beyond cool. There were definitely signs as to these guys' true identity, mainly with their needle in dialogue, but in my casual playthrough, it was definitely not something I saw coming. The mixed feelings fueled from both seeing the snail shamans again after so long since Hollow Knight, and the fact that these guys basically just betrayed Hornet and caused the apocalypse makes it so I can't decide whether I love them or hate them. Regardless of my feelings on the matter, the objective is clear. Hornet needs to somehow make her way down into the abyss of Farloom and confront the source of this problem. Luckily, the friends we made in the deep docks, thanks to the good old Wisp Fire Lantern strategy, have just a solution. I must sound like a broken record at this point, but god damn, getting to this area in my first playthrough was just so cool. Thankfully, it's a relatively small area too, so the coolness aspect of it isn't diminished too much on repeat playthroughs. The trusty old strategy of walking past all the enemies never fails, and it's not too long before we reach the Lake of Void where Grandmother Silk is trapped. I have already stood the Sentinel for One Dying Land. That role I would never play again. Oh my god, Hornet, you're just so fucking cool, bro. There's really nothing we can do here for now, so it's time to figure out how the hell we're making it out of here. Man, Team Cherry really said, what if we took Crystal Dash, but made it go up instead of to the side when they made Silksong, huh? In all seriousness, I actually do really like this ability, and it's just what we need for getting out of the Abyss, so I will indeed be vertical crystal dashing my way out of here. The Ascent from the Abyss is one of the coolest sequences in Act 3 for me. I touched on this in a previous part, but I think Team Cherry did such an excellent job with the platforming sequences in this game. None of them are super difficult, like there's nothing on the level of the Path of Pain, but the extra complexity of Hornet's moveset makes the platforming a lot of fun. I look forward to a potential ultra hard platforming sequence in a potential Silksong DLC if that's something Team Cherry decides to add. Returning to Farloom, I've got to go back to those fucking snails I hate and learn the next objective. From them, we obtain the final song of the Needlein, allowing Hornet to enter the memories of long-dead warriors. We'll need this ability as our next objective becomes clear. That delicate flower from Hollow Knight? Well, it's actually a flower called an Everbloom. Its pale power is the only way to ward off the darkness of the abyss. And the only way to make Hornet's memory of the bloom tangible enough to actually grasp it will be through the memory of these lands' greatest tragedies. Actually entering into these memories so Hornet can experience them for herself is going to be the only way to do so we'd better get started. Well, we can get to that in a second. First, it's finally time, for the first time since the Architect's Crest way back in early Act 2, to get an actually usable and balanced crest. The Crest of the Shaman is built for a spellcasting playstyle, so obviously it won't be at its most powerful for this run, but it does have a very respectable moveset, and unlike the Witch's Crest, an actually usable bind. See, unlike the other crests, the heal on the Shaman Crest can't be used in the air, as when you use it, Hornet will shoot to the ground and only heal once she lands. In addition to the less effective heal, the Shaman Crest trades any yellow or red slots for extra Silk skill slots, further reducing its effectiveness for this playthrough. These are what separate the Shaman Crest from something like, let's say, the Wanderer or the Reaper Crest. By all means, the Shaman Pogo is easy to use, but it comes with several downsides for using the crest. I'll definitely be sticking with it for most of the remainder of Act 3, which is basically a glorified boss rush by this point. Remember my whole spiel about the next objective? Collecting 3 hearts and yada yada yada? Well, I lied. We're actually collecting 4. If you didn't know, there's actually a hidden 4th heart to find in Act 3, from the memory of Lost Verdania and at the end of the Green Prince's questline. You can actually use this as an alternative to getting one of the other 3 in the game, but you know what's more fun than that? Getting all 4 of them. Lost Verdania is a nice area. The vibes here are definitely on point. It's a very pretty area, and it's nice to explore. The gameplay mostly involves going around and collecting notches of light to eventually unlock the boss of the area. There is also the fight against the Pale Stag, which is technically a boss, but to me it feels like more of a mini-boss, going down on the first try pretty easily. Who doesn't go down on the first try is the Clover Dancers. These guys are basically just Cogwork Dancers version 1.5. They're not really different enough to feel like a version 2.0, and honestly, they're a bit of a disappointment for that. I really love the Cogwork Dancers, so I'm all for fighting another powered up version of them, but this is just a little underwhelming. Their attacks are mostly the same, with a few additions, but it's nowhere near enough of a step up in difficulty to feel satisfying.
Oh, and that hit me too. That's...
Maybe I didn't give him enough credit.
Oh, I'm dead again.
Okay, come on now, what is that? I don't know what was going on here, honestly. I can remember feeling weird and for some reason just playing bad at the start of the stream that day. It's especially annoying for this boss because they have a particularly annoying runback, having to traverse through the entirety of Lost Verdania every time I lose. There we go, that's more like it. Of course, the boss that I talked the most game on actually ends up being a decent amount of trouble. Okay, that's 1 of 4 down. My next objective is the Coral Tower, so it's back to the Sands of Karak. What's funny is that in all my preparation for getting this file into Act 3, such as beating Cygnus and Gron early, I never came to the top of this area, so the Raging Conchfly is still here. This is actually a relatively tough fight, even in Act 3, so it does take me a few tries. I do notice something very interesting about the Shaman Crest in this fight though. Normally, the swing speed on this crest is a little bit on the slower side, and that most definitely applies to the Pogo too. However, it's completely different when you actually land the down air.
Drilling for a long time here.
For some reason, the attack speed on this crest is at Wanderer's Crest levels when using the Pogo. Usually this isn't that helpful, since if you just spam the Pogo, you'll miss the attacks because how high Hornet is sent up from the Pogo. But when a boss room has a low ceiling like this one, sheesh, that damage goes insane. There we go. Oh my god. Okay. Overall, a decently challenging fight, made even more enjoyable with the restrictions of the challenge. But the true challenge of this area was not some conch fly. Oh no. The true challenge comes now. Remember the high halls gauntlet? Ooh, 11 waves. How scary. Yeah, try literally 30.
Well, this is not a great start.
Yup. 30 waves of enemies across 3 separate enemy gauntlets with no checkpoints in between. The checkpoint only comes after gauntlet number 3, meaning even once you complete the gauntlet of gauntlets, each attempt against the boss of the area has to go through yet another 8-wave enemy gauntlet.
Of course.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm making progress each attempt though. That second attempt got me halfway into the second gauntlet. The Shaman's Crest is really throwing its weight around here. Seriously, I could not ask for a better crest to be doing this with. Such a reliable Pogo. Yeah, I am quite a fan of all of these gauntlets having a defined ceiling at the top of the screen. It allows me to shred through flying enemies, as you just saw. Even the more nimble flying enemies, as long as I can get them cornered, can be melted if I can stay above them at the top of the screen. At this point, I've made great progress and I'm getting pretty close to the end of the third gauntlet, and
Very funny. Good time.
yep. Okay, third time's the charm.
Dude, I wonder how far into the third one this one's in. It's like that was actually really easy. They're literally just the dudes that first punch one down that was
Now I can unlock the checkpoint, and for all future attempts of the boss, I can skip the first 3 gauntlets. Of course, the 4th gauntlet needs to be fought every time, but thankfully it's actually one of the easiest ones. With the gauntlets completed, the hard part of this should be over. That's right. Most people, including myself honestly, would say that doing the gauntlets in the Coral Tower is a harder challenge than the boss itself, Crest King Khan. This is because Khan basically has just one attack, summoning spires of coral to attack Hornet. Dodging this fight all day isn't a problem, but it is definitely much harder to get in hits thanks to the Pogo only. This is because the boss loves to jump around a lot, so certain attacks that he does can be unreliable to get punishes in. After a few attempts of the fight, I do eventually get a feel for what attacks will never be safe to punish, what attacks are kinda unreliable, and what attacks will always be safe to punish. The boss has a lot of health though, and since he isn't too hard to dodge, you know what that means.
What is that? No, I pressed the jump button, you liar. No. Dude, I was so tapped in. I get a heal. Why? What am I doing? Oh, my fucking muscle memory. Like, you could literally...
Yep, it wouldn't be the Daniel Pogo only challenge if I didn't make even the easier bosses unnecessarily harder by hitting them with non-Pogo attacks. For context, in the 5 attempts that it took to beat the boss, I actually only died to it once. The other 3 failed attempts were due to messing up the Pogos and hitting the boss normally. And of course, gotta do that damn gauntlet each time. Alright, let me lock in real quick.
Oh god, that is the worst way to start this fight. Yes! Woo! Oh my goodness, boys.
2 hearts down, 2 to go. Next up is the 2-boss combo of Nith and Seth. They are in a very unintuitive section of the map to reach. You actually have to go through the underworks to where the elevator at the Grand Gate first dropped you off. There is a small section here to explore, but really the only thing of note here are the bosses, starting off with Seth. Seth is such a fun fight. He feels much more fitting as the Guardian of the Pollen Heart. Just overall a more complete boss experience. He is a tough customer, and the fight takes quite a bit of getting used to for Pogo only. I think, no, but like every other challenge before, it's only going to be a matter of time. Yes, let's go. 07's in the chat. One more 07 in the chat for Seth. Regardless of my personal thoughts on the matter, Seth is not the Guardian of the Pollen Heart, Nith is. And if you're familiar with this fight and the crest I'm using, you might have noticed something. Health in a dream. 1 health in a dream. 1 health in a dream. First try. Wow, what a great first try. It really came down to the wire, but I pulled through at the end. Funnily enough, the Nith fight is basically unchanged for this challenge. As in her second phase, you do not have a floor to stand on, so the entire fight becomes a Pogo only challenge. The issue is that the grounded bind of the Shaman's Crest kind of needs a floor. So while this fight isn't really made harder in this challenge, I do have to do it without getting a heal off thanks to the crest I'm using. It's a loser's mentality. I didn't actually know if this would work, but using the platform you respawn on when hitting spikes, for the few seconds it sticks around is enough time to get a heal off. The extra health from doing this actually ended up being the reason I won on the first try, so it felt so clutch to do. 3 hearts down, 1 to go. The last heart is located in a section of the Hunter's March that is newly accessible with the Silksong ability. It's another section where I pretty much mostly just run past enemies and I make a break for it straight to Carmelita. Carmelita is by far my favorite of the memory fights in Act 3 and is a strong contender for my favorite boss in the whole game. She's so fun that even the pre-fight enemy gauntlet that you have to do every time isn't enough to take away from how good the fight is. Thankfully, the gauntlet here is super small compared to anything in the Crust King Khan fight, so it's not too annoying. Oh, Carmelita, my beloved. Okay, let me tone it down a little bit. Seriously though, what an excellent fight. I'd say other than Lost Lace, Carmelita is probably the toughest boss in the game. With 3 distinct phases, she is not only a very tanky boss, making for a long fight, but she has a varied moveset with all sorts of attacks. I spent multiple hours learning her moveset before I could beat her on my first playthrough, so I'm very used to this fight. It has been a while since that playthrough, so it does take me a few attempts to get the hang of things. Something I noticed quickly is just how strong being above the boss is. Many of her attacks just don't reach that high, and even her anti-air attacks are relatively reactable when I'm staying above the boss and chaining pogos together. She's not one of the hardest bosses in the game for nothing, though. Alright, Carmelita, time to lock in. Let's dance. In a dream. In a dream. It's not over yet. I'm still in it. Oh, I love that fight so much, bro. Oh my god. 4 down. The final heart has been acquired. With cinema in the form of a boss fight completed, next up is just straight up pure cinema. Remember the 2 million times so far that I've said, in my first playthrough, this was so cool to see, wow. Alright, so combine how cool it was to see each of those things for every time I've said it so far, double that, and that's how cool seeing this was in my first playthrough. You see her? That's my goat, mommy goat. Oh, her? Yeah, she's also my goat, sensei goat. And of course, last but not least, this is my goat, tree mommy goat. And from the memories of these 3 figures from Hornet's past, Hornet obtains the Everbloom. And that's it. Hornet is armed with everything she needs to end this. All that's left is to return to the Abyss and face the final challenge. The final, and by what I think is a pretty large margin, hardest boss of Silksong, Lost Lace. All of Lace's moves cracked out with much longer range, speed, and double damage on everything. Not to mention the void moves she spams every other second in her later phases. Of course, for this final boss, I make the switch back to the crest I've always been able to rely on. I will beat this boss with the Crest of the Hunter. This boss is beyond tough. Over a dozen deaths. Nearly 2 hours of attempts. I was in the air! Coming so close, yet being so far. Death after death after death. Fittingly, Lost Lace has been the single toughest challenge throughout this whole playthrough so far. But just like everything before it, Lace will fall. We know it, chat. We know it. We both know it. That she's just stuck. Oh, that's a stagger. Come on. Bro.
How much health does she have left? Yes! Yes!
Play a song. We're playing a song, chat. We're playing a song.
Let's fucking go! Pogo only.
Silksong completed. As of the time of me completing this run on stream, and even still, as of writing this script, I am the only YouTuber who has completed all 3 acts of Silksong with only pogoing, at least from the searching I did for other videos. There are other pogo only playthroughs, such as this amazing beast pogo only run from fellow YouTuber Antscan, but my run is the first to get to the true ending. It feels so cool to say that I get to be the world's first at something like this, and I'm really glad I chose this as my idea for my first challenge run. It really was one hell of a time. And that's the end of the video, my very first Silksong challenge run. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and the previous videos on this run, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. I'm gunning for 10,000 subscribers as my next goal for this channel, and we've got a long way to go. I live stream this entire run on Twitch, here on YouTube, and on other platforms, so if you want to watch these runs live, make sure to enable notifications so you don't miss the action. I've already started my next challenge, the Cursed Crest Challenge, and it's been an interesting experience so far. Lastly, if you want to support the channel, you can become a member for as little as $1 a month to gain access to exclusive emotes, in-video shoutouts, and more in the future. And of course, one last thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.